Hey everyone. Hey Randy Man. Hey Sarah. Hey Jen. Hey Allie. Hey MGL. Michelle generates lies. KK. Pow Pow. KK. Hey Nathan. Hey Rody Gal. Hey Mel. I was gonna go on camera tonight because I have a new little setup, but I have a little secret. I was up really late last night gaming, playing there's this new game called Sons of the Forest, and it's like one of those games where you have to like craft things and build and do all that stuff, and it's super addicting. So it was up really late, and then I finally got to sleep, and then my kid woke me up super early, so I took a nap before I came on, and I thought about going on camera, and I was like, oh no. Hey James Anderson. But I got a new background. I put like crocodile skin black wallpaper behind me and some like red, lights for like an underglow. I gotta get some like wall art. I was thinking of, have you guys ever seen, hey Roll Tide, have you ever seen the site Crown and Paw, where they take your animal and they put like your pet, and they put it on like bodies that are really funny, like kings and stuff like that? I was thinking that would be pretty funny to get a picture like that. Hey Amory. I say hi to Georgia Peach. Hey Georgia Peach. So, what y'all been up to? Sorry about last night. I was gonna do this last night, but my kid got home from his dad's and he was like in a little mood, so I hung out with him, and then I went back to gaming because it was late by the time he went to bed. And I think this is gonna. I did like I went down a rabbit hole, and you know what happens when you go down rabbit holes. I watched that Netflix documentary about the Murdaughs, which was excellent. If anybody hasn't watched it, I give it a 10 out of 10. I was literally in tears several times watching that documentary. I just really liked it. They just did a really good job showing everything that went down, and the magnitude of it. I watched a little bit of it this morning, Georgia Peach, but I didn't get to see the end. They rested. I didn't even know they rested, but yeah, I'm feeling hung jury too. I mean, I'm hoping guilty because, sorry, did I say hi, Mark W? Hey, Mark. I think it's probably going to be a hung jury too. I mean, I totally think he's guilty, but I just don't think they prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Oh, I always thought he did it. I mean, I knew, I've been following it for a long time, so I've known all the deets. So I've always thought he did it. I do even more so now that they have narrowed the timeline down to very, very small time frame. And I just really can't, when I try and think like who else could it have been, nothing makes sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that two killers would show up to the property with no guns to a house that's basically a gun fortress, and risk their lives stealing their, the people's guns and shooting them with them. They're like, not, if you really, Eric Bland had a really good tweet. Let me see if I can find it. And he broke it. He said it the absolute best. Actually, I think I screenshotted it, but let me see. He said it so perfect, like how I was feeling. Okay, ready? What kind of father waits 42 minutes to call his only surviving son to tell that son that his mother and brother were brutally murdered, and in the interim time periods calls friends and family members and reads text messages and texts groundskeeper about sunflower trees, and when he finally decides to get around to calling that son, he doesn't tell him to stay away from Moselle and go immediately to the police and get yourself safe because there's a killer on the loose that would want to take down your family. Like, why wouldn't you immediately call your son and be like, "Hey, are you safe? Is everything okay?" I would be freaking out. And there's so much stuff that doesn't make sense to me. And when I try and think of who else it could have been, all roads lead back to Alex for me. And that's it. Let's see. Taking the jury to the property is going to be something. Oh, for sure. I watched it for the first time last night too. First time I ever seen the footage. Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure the footage was on the morning of the 8th before SLED searched Moselle, and John, Marvin, and Buster were unloading all the guns and stuff from the house, which was super, super sus. Yeah, the timeline is just so short and everything's so tight. I just have a hard time, thinking that it wasn't him. Hey, man, I just have a really hard time with it. But anyway, the Netflix documentary sent me in a rabbit hole because if anyone had watched the Netflix documentary, they talk about Moselle, and they talk about that Moselle had their own plane and a landing strip and one of those little did you ever see the show Tailspin? It reminds me of one of those planes. I don't know what the heck they're called, but I think it was Tailspin, the one with the guy flew the plane. It was in the 90s. It was the cartoon with the little birds. Well, anyway, that's what it reminds me of, that kind of plane, if you know what I'm talking about. It's a little guy. And then they show Anthony Cook, and he says that Paul has always said that the plane has been used for drug smuggling and things like that. So I started, I got to thinking and started looking into things about Moselle and drug smuggling, and I actually found a lot of information, and Fit News really did a good job uncovering it. So I just wanted to show you guys Moselle's history and its possible drug smuggling connections, which I think is really crazy. And then it makes me wonder, is there more to this that we don't know? Did they have some bigger operation? And I think y'all will find this interesting. So let me put it on my screen. Oh my goodness, hold on. Okay. Let me put the screen up. Alright, so it says to understand Alex Murdaugh's potential ties to drug trafficking and find answers to many questions about the missing money in the Murdaugh murder saga, we need to look at the man who was a friend of the family named Barrett Boulware. I actually have a picture of Maggie with Barrett, which let me send it to myself and I'll show you guys so you can see what he looks like. But while I send that, I will let me keep reading. Hold on. All right, so Boulware died of cancer in 2018. But ever since 2021, when Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were found dead on the Moselle property, which was previously owned by Boulware. All right, so in a nutshell, Boulware was a very close friend of the Murdaugh family. And when Boulware died, he handed all his assets and made Alex the executor of his will and a lot of stuff to Alex, which is a little strange. They had some business dealings with each other, and they had planned to open up like a jellyfish company, but it had, I think, like people in the town thought it would be bad for the environment or something. I don't know how having a jellyfish company would do that, but oh, thank you for the gifted membership. Hold on, let me pull up the picture of Maggie real quick so y'all can see it. It's taking a minute. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is Maggie, and that's Boulware. And he has a very interesting family history. So, well, not really family history, but his own history, I guess. All right, so below is a timeline of events by our researcher, Jen Wood, that shows the Boulware's relationship with the Murdaughs. Oh, so there's usually Roll Tide, there's a button on previous streams that says join, and you hit join, and you get a membership, or hold on, there's a link. All right, so in December 1951, in Beaufort County versus Jasper County, Buster Murdaugh and Thomas Boulware worked together for the respondents in the South Carolina Supreme Court case. So I believe their family goes back generations, basically. Well, there you go, Roll Tide. Look at Mark breaking the algorithm again. Today's court was crazy. Yeah, I seen that. The guy who got paid $10,000. I seen that. I was watching him. So basically, the Boulwares and the Murdaugh family relationship goes back to Buster Murdaugh and Thomas Boulware working together in 1951 on a Supreme Court case. In August 1977, Barrett Boulware marries Janine Morris, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Irvin S. Morris of Allendale. And I think that's not the Barrett Boulware that died of cancer, but his father, if I remember correctly. On January 1980, Island City boat sinking. All right, so this is in 1980. According to the state newspaper, 11 Miami area men were rescued 50 to 60 miles off the coast near St. Helena Sound. The men claimed to have been rescued by the Waterworld and Miss Kathy boats. The Waterworld was taking on the water. The men claimed to have been traveling from Miami to New York. The Miss Kathy was owned by Joel Morris of Beaufort and operated by Edward Legree, who was later arrested in another drug bust. The Waterworld was owned by Barrett Boulware of Allendale and operated by Johnny Morris. Apparently, no one was arrested. And then here's the February 1983 Bahamas drug bust. 17 tons of marijuana were seized from a shrimp boat in the Bahamas, according to the Tallahassee Democrat. And here's the article. Hey Tia, I miss you too. Thank you. That's fine. Well, when you're done your call, come back. Hey Linda, you're not too late. I just started. I was just talking about the history of Moselle and a friend of the Murdaugh family named Barrett Boulware, who has some interesting ties to drug smuggling and ties to Alex Murdaugh. So, 7 people, including 4 North Florida residents, were arrested over the weekend when about 17 tons of marijuana were seized from the 67-foot shrimp boat, authorities said. That's a lot of marijuana. Yeah, 17 tons. Mary Sayas of the U.S. Customs Service said $33,000 in cash and 3 vehicles were seized Friday and Saturday. All 9 defendants are charged with 2 federal violations: conspiracy to possess and distribute 34,000 pounds of marijuana and conspiracy to import marijuana into the United States. According to the agencies, those arrested were William Raymond Phillips of Carabel, a former attorney for the Franklin County School Board. He's not related to William Phillips of Panacea, editor of the weekly newspapers in Crawfordville and Carabel. Sarah J. Wyatt of Carabel, Sandra G. Clark of Carabel, Franklin C. Branch of East Point, Saxby S. Chaplin of Frogmore, Richard Harriet of Frogmore, and Barrett Boulware, Allendale County, South Carolina. Also named in the federal complaint, but not yet in custody, are E.J. Lewis of Panama City and a man known as Red, last name unknown, of Beaufort County, South Carolina, said Hal Morris, the U.S. Attorney in Charleston, South Carolina. Bond has been set at $150,000 each for Clark and Wyatt and at $50,000 each for Chaplin and Harriet. Morrison said none of the suspects have been able to post bond. Phillips has served as a lawyer for the Franklin County School Board until last November, said school board member Wayne Mock. Clark is Phillips' office secretary, Mock said. In his dealings with the board, Mock said Phillips had always presented himself in a professional manner. And then, all right, so E.J. Lewis and a man known as Red, supposedly identified as William Elaine, were sought in connection with the bust. They were charged with conspiracy to distribute 34,000 pounds of marijuana and conspiracy to import marijuana. Barrett Boulware's father was also charged. Branch was the captain of Boulware's boat, the Janine Ann. 2 more suspects sought in the pot case. Authorities are looking for 2 more suspects in connection with the seizure of about 15 tons of marijuana from a shrimp boat seized near the Bahamas in a case that has netted 7 people. Barrett Boulware, who turned himself in, Franklin Branch, 34-year-old captain of the Traveler, and William Phillips waived bond hearings. Branch and Phillips are from Carabel. After the vessel was seized, the two women were taken off in custody in Miami and were replaced by undercover agents as the ship continued toward Beaufort. Branch remained on board the boat, which is registered in nearby Frogmore, and left Beaufort for the Caribbean January 13th. All right, so April 1983, Franklin Branch, the star witness in the case against the Boulwares, was killed in an apparent vehicle versus pedestrian incident in Tallahassee, Florida. According to the Tallahassee Democrat, Branch was on his way to a bar one night in St. Joe when he walked into the path of an oncoming vehicle. The article noted that Branch was scheduled to testify in a drug trial at the time of his death. So, super shady. Here is the article for it. A 33-year-old federal witness was killed early Saturday morning when he walked into the path of an oncoming vehicle. Yeah, Linda, the Boulwares have been Murdaugh family friends for a long time and have done business together. And the Boulwares owned Moselle. Oh no, Lori. Well, hopefully you can still watch us and we can give you light. Hey, Boston. So, yeah. Alex Murdaugh obtained Moselle from Boulware, which we'll get to soon. At 1:20 a.m., Franklin C. Branch of East Point was apparently making his way to the Wonder Bar in St. Joe Beach when he was struck by a car driven by T.J. Whitfield. Whitfield, returning home from Gulfport, Mississippi, was questioned by authorities and released. Branch was one of 9 people arrested in February when authorities seized about 17 tons of marijuana from the shrimp boat in Beaufort, South Carolina. According to Trooper Millard Gilman of the Florida Highway Patrol, Branch had a high blood alcohol level at the time of death. Gilman said the FBI agents were investigating the case as Branch was scheduled to testify in a drug trial. Funeral services are scheduled for 3 p.m. today, blah, blah, blah. All right, so 1983. Charges were dropped against both of the Boulwares after a key government witness was killed when he stepped in front of a car. 4 others were convicted. So 4 convicted in drug smuggling. 4 people have been convicted and charges have been dropped against 2 others in the trial involving the confiscation February 11th of 15 tons of marijuana found on a boat near Beaufort. Convicted on drug smuggling charges last week were William Raymond Phillips, Johnny Chaplin, Red Lane of Columbia, and Sandra Clark. Each face a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison and fines of $140,000. Charges were dropped against Barrett Thomas Boulware and his father, Barrett Boulware, both of Allendale, after a key government witness was killed when he stepped in front of a car. So the charges were dropped to the Boulwares. In May 1983, the U.S. District Judge Falcon B. Hawkins barred federal government from reindicting Barrett Boulware and his father, stating the grand jury could not present the same charges against Boulware to a grand jury a second time. So, they had already started the trial, I assume, and the star witness died, so they got off, and the judge prohibited them from recharging him. Charleston, U.S. District Attorney Falcon B. Hawkins has prohibited the government. Oh, I read that already. A federal grand jury indicted Barrett Boulware on 2 conspiracy charges in the seizure of 17 tons of marijuana on the traveler Jeanine Ann in the Bahamas, but the government later dismissed the charges. Hawkins ruled yesterday that authorities could not present the same charges against Boulware to the grand jury again. And the judge said, "I think it's wrong for Mr. Boulware to sit out there and wonder if the next grand jury is going to indict him or the next one, Hawkins said. All right. I cannot imagine that, Nate. No way. No. It's a lot. I don't think I think they may have offed him and made it look like an accident. Just my thank you, Tia. Just my thoughts. All right, so in June 1983, Randy Murdaugh unsuccessfully argues income tax evasion in a Fourth Circuit appeals court for Thomas G. Hayward. The case involves plain and possible drug trafficking. Let me click this. Businessman gets 2 years in prison on tax charges. A Hilton Head Island businessman who federal prosecutors charge made substantial money in drug trafficking has been sentenced to 2 years in prison on tax evasion charges. Thomas G. Hayward, convicted last March on 2 counts of filing fraudulent income tax returns, was sentenced yesterday by U.S. District Judge Weston Houck to 2 years on 1 count. Houck gave Hayward a suspended 2-year sentence on the second count and 3 years probation. The judge said he did not take the government's drug smuggling allegations into account in determining Houck's penalty. I'm a strong believer that a case be tried strictly on the facts in that case. This was a net worth case, and the government had to provide a likely source of alleged taxable income. This was the only likely source they could prove. Still, you're not here to be sentenced on a conviction of smuggling drugs. As far as I'm concerned, you are not guilty of smuggling drugs. During Hayward's trial, the government presented evidence from a 2-year-old marijuana seizure in Georgia. The marijuana was found in an abandoned DC-3 belonging to Hayward, president of Hilton Air Service, Inc., and Hayward Air Spray, Inc. Hayward reported the plane stolen February 5th, 1980, the same day Georgia authorities discovered it in a rural county about 100 miles west of Savannah. However, the defendant contended that his worth increased because of the $175,000 loan he received from a Savannah associate who was killed a short time later. The government contends Hayward still owes more than $59,000 in taxes for the years 1978 and 1979. Assistant U.S. Attorney Wells Dixon, who prosecuted Hayward, said the Internal Revenue Service would seek to recover that amount. Hayward remains free on $10,000 bond pending the outcome of his appeal. If this country is to function, people have got to file taxes, he said. It's about an impossible tax to enforce IRS laws. We don't have the manpower. All right, so Randy Murdaugh argues the tax evasion case for Thomas, and then in the late 1980s, this is where it gets interesting. Barrett and his wife were sitting in the back seat of a car she had rented for a trip from North Carolina to Miami and back. They were stopped for speeding right near the Georgia and South Carolina line in Chatham County, which is where Savannah is. This is not too far from where we live in Beaufort County and not too far from Hampton County and Allendale County, where the Boulwares lived at the time. The couple were stopped by a state trooper who noticed that Barrett had been sitting upright in the car when the traffic stop was initiated, but by the time the officer approached the vehicle, Barrett suddenly fallen fast asleep on his wife's shoulder. The trooper grew suspicious and asked for permission to search the car. The driver said he had no objection to a search, and the front passenger opened the glove compartment and pressed a button to pop open the trunk, where there was 7 pounds of marijuana and 28 grams of cocaine. Barrett, who was now fully awake, immediately got out of the car to tell the trooper that neither the driver nor the front passenger had the authority to grant the search, but by then the trooper had seen the drugs. Barrett eventually gave his consent to search the trunk, but refused to sign a written authorization. In addition to the drugs in the trunk, pot was also found in Mrs. Boulware's purse. The Boulwares were convicted. He was convicted of trafficking cocaine and possession of marijuana, and she was convicted of possession of marijuana. On November 1988, Janine and Barrett tried to appeal their decision, and they were denied. Fit News could not find any record of the Boulwares going to prison. So here's a hearing where it explains, though tried jointly, Mr. and Mrs. Boulware filed separate appeals from his conviction of trafficking in cocaine, possession of marijuana, and her conviction of possession of marijuana. We have consolidated the appeals. They were stopped by a state trooper for speeding. That trooper asked Blake, the driver, for consent to search the vehicle, and that Blake said he had no objection, but the car was not his and he needed to check with the person who rented it. That when Blake told the occupants of the car that the trooper wanted to search the car, Reed, the passenger in the front seat, pushed the button in the glove compartment, which opened the trunk. That trooper, who was standing at the trunk at the time, was able to see marijuana in a bag in the trunk. That Mr. Boulware got out of the car and spoke to the trooper, eventually giving his consent to search, but refusing to sign a written consent. That Mr. Boulware stated after the marijuana was found, but before the cocaine was revealed, that the drugs were his, and that 7 pounds of marijuana and approximately 28 grams of cocaine were found in the trunk, and a small amount of marijuana was found in Miss Boulware's purse. I'll put the link in case you guys want to read the rest of this. Hey, Risk. No, Devil. I just woke up from a nap before I came live, so it's a little scratchy. I was really late playing it, and I didn't take a nap today, and I was trying to hang, and I was like, I think I can do it. I think I can make it. And then I crashed like an hour before I went live, and then woke up and was like, ah. So my voice still hasn't recovered from my nap. All right, so February 1997, purchase of property owned by James L. Ely by Murdaugh Holdings and Barrett Boulware for $115,000. So they had properties together. Hey, Jesse Catch True Crime. Did I say hi to you? If I didn't, hello. Welcome. All right, so on March 23rd, 2000, Boulware purchases 4157 Moselle Road property from Don Houck for $257,000. Where was his name? His name was in there earlier, but what did it come up as? I forget. I'm going to have to go back and look, but I know. Was that the judge? His name, Don Houck's name, definitely came up earlier. Remind me to go. Oh, I'll remember. I'll go back and I'll see after we get to the end of this. Where I seen that already. Okay. December 2003, Barrett Boulware and Alex Murdaugh purchased property from James Ely, that name again, for $115,000. July 2004, Barrett Boulware and Alex Murdaugh purchased property from William Gay for $150,000. July 2006, breach of contract filed against Barrett Boulware in Beaufort County by the Salkahouchee Woods LLC. Alex Murdaugh represents Boulware in this matter. May 2008, foreclosure judgment against Barrett Boulware in the amount of $408,664.78. March 2009, 4157 Moselle Road is transferred from Boulware to his wife for $1. On December 2011, Barrett Boulware purchases Saltcatcher Woodlands property from Kelly. September 2012, Barrett Boulware Sr. dies. April 2013, 4157 Moselle Road transfer from Barrett Boulware to Alexander Murdaugh for $5. So you can see, here's all the parcel information. And you can see the purchases made. Then he transfers it to Maggie. December 2016, 4157 Moselle Road transfer to Maggie Murdaugh for $5. July 2018, Boulware granted power of attorney to Alex Murdaugh, authorizing his attorney and business partner to lease, let, take possession, bargain, sell, assign, convey, pledge, mortgage, and encumber, repair, insure, and generally manage any and all property, both real and personal, which I own or may hereafter acquire from any source. The instrument Boulware signed just prior to his death also authorized Murdaugh to sign, execute, and deliver any and all legal documents in his name and to deposit any monies received from any source, whatever, for me and in my name with any bank, and to draw and deliver checks in my name against said monies and other monies to be deposited in my name or to my credit. Boulware further authorized Murdaugh, sorry, it's loud, to do all things necessary concerning any insurance policies, including the right to change beneficiary, and was even granted control over decisions regarding my health and health care. Finally, the document made clear any decisions made by Murdaugh regarding Boulware's assets would be binding on myself and my heirs. No, Jessica, it was this guy, Barrett Boulware, and then it went to Alex, and then it went to Maggie. Boulware was Alex Murdaugh's business partner who had some drug trafficking stuff in his history and his family. So there's a possible connection to drug trafficking. Well, what led me here was in that documentary, Paul told Anthony Cook that plane on Moselle was used for drug trafficking. So I was like, well, maybe there is some, truth to that. And this guy seemed like he could have possibly been doing that, and maybe Alex was in on it. All right, so Barrett Boulware dies of cancer on September 12th, 2018. And that's it. So that's how Alex acquired Moselle. Hey, Pecan Pie. From Barrett Boulware. And Barrett Boulware, they also owned hold on, let me pull up my screenshots and Yeah, Alex's dad passed away, but here's talking about Barrett Boulware passing away from cancer. He did as well. Okay, so um there's so many different. All right, so there was a couple islands that I think Alex and Barrett owned an island together, and then there's another island called Rose Island that was owned by the many generations of Murdaughs, and I believe they may have liquidated it, but they had a couple islands, which is interesting to me. And then there's also, all right, so there's a couple law firm partners who were interconnected with that. All right, so not only did Alex purchase from Boulware, but they were partners with this jellyfish gig. They wanted to start this jellyfish. I don't know what exactly um, it was, but they wanted to start something that had to do with jellyfishing, and people weren't happy with that. The main companies involved were Jenkins Creek Marina and Charters, Millenarian Trading, Nautica and Co. Austin Crosby filed a lawsuit for them against Beaufort County because of added rules against the jellyfishing companies. Millenarian's main official, Paul Yang, has been involved in Manhattan's. I don't want to say that yet, but they're saying that there's possible like cartel ties, but I have to look more into this guy. But there's um the one company's official they think has connections there, but they definitely were gonna open this jellyfishing business, which makes me wonder if it was like a front to. It's a delicacy, but time consuming to process. Okay, gotcha. But it makes me wonder if maybe there's some kind of connection to they want a boating company for a reason to go back and forth to drug traffic. I mean, obviously, I don't know this for sure, but it is interesting that he's connected to people who had drug trafficking charges. Um, trying to see if I seen a bunch of stuff, but I just have. Trying to find the. So they had a boat, I believe, that transferred over to Alex, and they named it like the the Key West or the Key West something. All right, so Rose Island, which was owned by the Murdaughs, was sold for $2.5 million to Legacy LLC on August 2021. All right, here we go. All right, so private island owned by Alex Murdaugh and suspected drug smuggler for sale in South Carolina. This is an article. I think it's the Island Packet. A Beaufort County island co-owned by disgraced, disbarred South Carolina attorney Richard Alex Murdaugh and a deceased drug smuggling suspect is up for sale pending court approval. Jailed in Richland County and facing more than 90 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits, Murdaugh has had his assets under the control of a court-appointed attorneys known as receivers who are tasked with identifying assets and potentially liquidating them to create a settlement fund for alleged victims. Amy Hill, attorney for co-receivers Peter McCoy Jr. and John Lay Jr., filed a motion for court consideration and approval of the sale of real estate on September 20th before Judge Daniel Hall in Hampton County Court for Common Pleas. This property that's for sale, known as Island A, is a 22-acre island that is the largest in the 3 Cherry Hill Islands, also called the Williams Islands, located off the coast of Beaufort, according to the court filing. It is accessible only by boat and only during certain tides. It has a dock that suffered hurricane damage long before the approach of Ian that's not considered usable. I'll look it up and see who owned Legacy LLC. I thought I seen that in my screenshots. But, the island's co-owned by Murdaugh, and the island for sale is 50% owned by Murdaugh through Murdaugh Holdings and 50% owned by the estate of Barrett Boulware, according to the court filing. According to another filing on September 1st by the co-receivers in Hampton County Court of Common Pleas, Murdaugh owns at least 7 islands in and around Beaufort County, ranging in size from 20.05 acres to 0.08 acres, all either directly as a co-owner with Boulware or as a co-owner through an entity or a joint venture. So him and Boulware own 7 islands together. Like, why? Like, what for what reason would you guys own, like, co-own islands together? Court records indicate an extensive business relationship between the accused Hampton County attorney and the late Barrett T. Boulware, in addition to their joint ownership of properties. Boulware was the former owner of Moselle, the rural Murdaugh estate in Carleton County, before selling it to Murdaugh in April 2013. Moselle is where Alex Murdaugh's wife, Maggie, and Paul were found shot to death on June 7, 2021. Alex Murdaugh is facing 2 murder charges in connection. Boulware faced charges as part of Operation Jackpot during the early days of President Ronald Reagan's war on drugs. He was accused of being involved in a Low Country-based marijuana smuggling operation. According to reports from the Associated Press and the United Press International, Boulware, an Allendale County fisherman operating out of Beaufort County, was indicted on February 11th, this is the story where they were indicted, but the main witness was killed, hit by a car. Boulware died September 2018 at the age of 61 after an extended illness. Murdaugh and Boulware have not been connected by criminal allegations from authorities. Murdaugh does, however, face drug allegations on his own. Among his many charges, the South Carolina State Grand Jury indicted him in June on 2 criminal conspiracy counts, including narcotics count related to oxycodone for alleged narcotic-related crimes in a multi-county area. Listen to this, the co-receivers with joint approval from the estate of Barrett Boulware recently received an offer to purchase the island for sale for $285,000 with no conditions, and their motion asked for the court to approve the sale. That's ridiculously low amount of money for an island. I mean, I don't know how big it is though, but Palmetto State Bank currently has 1 mortgage against all 7 islands owned by Murdaugh and the Boulware estate, including Island A. In a recent court filing, the co-receiver said that Palmetto State Bank will release its mortgage upon receipt of $54,119.80. The sale is expected to result in more than $100,000 being deposited to the receivership estate, and the remaining islands will no longer be subject to the bank's lien. Prior to the co-receiver's appointment, Murdaugh and the Boulware estate jointly engaged Jarrett Romero, a licensed real estate broker, and the personal representative of the estate of Barrett Boulware to market and sell all 3 Cherry Note Islands. That's crazy. They had 7 islands together. I mean, I definitely, from everything I read, yeah, Cheryl, he bought Moselle from Barrett Boulware, who was his business partner, who died of cancer. They owned several islands together, and Barrett Boulware had previous drug smuggling charges and ties to drug smuggling. So I definitely think there is something more there. I think he bought Moselle for $5, not $1, but same thing. Prosecution. Did they? So wait, did his brothers testify today? I totally missed that. While I'm on here, I'll look it up real quick. We could do a little recap of. I don't know what day it was today. Trying to find a recap of today. Anyone know what day it was? Like the number day? Okay, here we go. So they called John Marvin. Huh. Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian. I think it's backwards. Yeah. All right, so I know they had a guy on who was saying that he believes there was 2 shooters. I don't know, like it didn't really make sense to me. Like I still I don't know. I guess there could be a possibility that it's 2 shooters, but now that I think that he used the golf cart, I think it's just him. They had like who was the other expert? They had the guy on who was explaining the close he was explaining it the shotgun and how close it would have to be. And I think they're trying to argue that the gun had to be so close to Paul and that Alex could never do that, but I'm not really sure. Or maybe to just make Sled look terrible. I don't know. All right, here we go. Breaks for lunch. All right, in a 2021 interview with the Hilton Head Island Packet, John Marvin said he was embarrassed by his brother's financial schemes, which Alex admitted in his own testimony. All right, so John Marvin testifies. The defense called John Marvin, Alex's brother, John Marvin. John owns a business renting construction and agricultural equipment. He is the only one of his siblings who did not attend law school. Yes, sir, and proud of it, he said. and that he was embarrassed of Alex's financial crimes. John, Alex's brother, spent his first minutes on the stand testifying about the Murdaugh family dynamics. "You'll have to excuse me," John Marvin said, stuttering through tears, when the defense attorney Jim Griffin asked about Paul Murdaugh. "I'm going to have a hard time talking about Paul. We had a special relationship," which I'm pretty sure Paul worked for John Marvin, so they were very close, and he stayed with John Marvin for a while too. Like, he lived with him over the summer because he worked for him. Yeah, he's got like a tractor rental company. Hey, Cash Chick. Despite his emotions, John Marvin chuckled when Griffin asked whether Paul had a nickname. And they said they called him Little Rooster. John Marvin cleaned the crime scene the day after the murders. After Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were killed, John Marvin Murdaugh testified that he visited the Moselle kennels the day after the murders. John and several other family members, including Alex and Buster Murdaugh, were gathered at the house the following day. At that time, John Marvin testified he wasn't sure why he felt the need to visit the kennels other than to gain some kind of understanding. He was unsure whether the crime scene was still active, so he said he called a friend in law enforcement. John Marvin testified his friend told him the crime scene was cleared and he decided to visit. The feed room hadn't been cleaned of the blood and gore left from Paul's Murdaugh. John said he felt the urge to take care of the rest of Paul's remains and started cleaning the room. For some reason, it felt like something I needed to do for Paul. I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like I owed him, and I started cleaning, and I can promise you no mother, father, aunt, or uncle should ever have to see or do what I did that day. It's the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. Later that day, knowing that Maggie Murdaugh's phone wasn't found at the crime scene, John Marvin said Buster Murdaugh, Alex's surviving son, showed him the Find My iPhone app on his phone. Buster used it to locate his mother's phone. John said he showed the location to nearby SLED investigators, but they turned him away, noting they had their own technology coming later that day to help locate Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone. John Marvin found and spoke with the 14th Circuit solicitor Duffy Stone at the scene. He said he agreed to track down Maggie's cell phone. If they recovered it about a half mile down the road, they informed SLED investigators who arrived and recovered it. If SLED had proof of the very bloody t-shirt that even wiped his face off with, yeah, I don't think they had. I don't think they even. I don't know. I don't think they even knew where that shirt was. Yeah, well, they use that 1,700 acres for hunting, planting plants. They had their own pond for duck hunting. They definitely did more than just dog kennels. They had a plane with a landing strip. I mean, you know. All right. The state cross-examines John Marvin. Prosecutors have started their cross-examination of Alex's brother John. Before defense attorney Jim Griffin ended his questioning, he asked whether John Marvin remembered making a promise the day after Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were killed. In my mind, and out loud, I told Paul I loved him. I told him I'd find out who did this to him. Have you found out? Griffin asked. And John says, I have not. John Marvin, Alex lied to SLED. During his testimony, John Marvin confirmed for prosecutors that his brother Alex lied to law enforcement investigating Paul and Maggie. The defense questioning highlighted that Murdaugh's family provided complete cooperation with investigators, with which prosecutor John Conrad quickly struck back at. Conrad asked John Marvin whether he would agree that since Alex did not mention the kennel video to SLED, he did not cooperate fully with investigators. Would you agree that Alex lying was not full cooperation? Conrad asked. John Marvin agreed. He lied. Alex Murdaugh admitted to lying about his whereabouts and the murders. He said he had paranoid thoughts. Defense rests. Chaos. Court adjourned. Defense attorney Dick Harpootley informally arrested the defense's case after John Marvin Murdaugh. During the state's brief cross of John Marvin, Alex Murdaugh's brother, prosecutor John Conrad, asked John Marvin if there was any hope for the health of their father. John Marvin agreed. The family had been told their father, Randolph, was in the hospital, but that it could be pneumonia and not a complication of his cancer. So if your brother had told Jan Seckinger during that day that your dad was taking a major turn for the worse, that would not be truthful, correct? And he said that would be correct, but the testimony I heard was that he didn't say that it was terminal, John replied. Parker Law Group CFO Gene Seckinger previously on the witness stand recounted the conversation she had with Murdaugh. She said she went to Murdaugh's office to confront him about missing fees owed to the firm, and she suspected he was taking for personal use, but the conversation was cut short after Murdaugh received a phone call about bad news about his father's health. So we'll see if they have any rebuttal witnesses or anything like that then tomorrow, I guess. But yeah, they had a lot of land. I really think there is more to this connection with Barrett Boulware, and I really, really want to keep looking into it and see if I can find anything. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. Look where I saw Don Houck's name earlier in that. I know I saw his name somewhere. I don't know. I'll have to go look. Hey, Kayla. John Marvin said there was no blue tarp. He looked. Who put it there? Ghost. Well, John Marvin and Buster were definitely cleaning out guns and throwing them in the back of their truck before Sled got there. So I just take what he would say with a grain of salt, because that's just how the family is. They're fixers. They, CB Rowe is the groundskeeper. Like one of the groundskeepers that works on Moselle. Well, anyways, I am going to end it. I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I'm definitely going to look into it more and see if I can find anything else about that connection. But I just thought that was super interesting that the history of Moselle has some ties to someone who got in trouble for drug smuggling. So maybe there was some connection there. Maybe that's like a missing part of the piece that we, don't know about yet, that it could be something more than... It's okay, Kayla, I'm sorry, but I promise it's interesting. Go back and check it out. It's about how Alex acquired Moselle and how the guy that he bought Moselle from for $5, he was in business with. They were business partners. They owned 7 islands together. And that guy got in trouble for drug smuggling. So there could be a possible connection there, which I think is, super important to look into. So have a good night, everybody. I'm going to get some shut-eye, and I appreciate you all coming. Thank you. And I'll be back Wednesday. And I'll talk to y'all then. Have a good night, everybody. And thank you for the gifted memberships. I really appreciate it so much. Bye.